Siomra Beag.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Top of the morning, and welcome back to the Siomra Beag. I'm at the Michael of Michael and Benjamin's podcast, and top of the bloody morning to you. And anyways, I'm joined by another Paddy. Say hello, Paddy.
My name's Ben.
Yes, Ben, you're a Paddy, aren't you?
It depends on who you ask.
Well, now, Ben, surprise, surprise, and because I tell you what, I'll be doing this voice for the whole podcast.
Oh, what a win.
What a rare treat it is at all.
Yeah, lucky us, huh?
People will be really happy with it. People will be saying it's one of the best podcasts, one of the best creative decisions I think anyone has ever made at all.
Sure, if the Lord ever had a favourite podcast, Michael, to be this one.
Oh, I've finally gotten to you, and now you're doing it as well. Sure, this is a grand soft day.
It's like an infection.
It's unbelievable.
Well, look, Michael, to celebrate this fine occasion on this soft morning, I'm going to sing you an old Irish tune. Just hang in there now. You ready?
Oh, go on.
You ready?
Go on, yeah.
The music for the podcast. We don't actually have anything music.
Oh, I don't know if I'll be able to do it for the whole time. The bloody mobile telephone is going mad.
Wow.
It's people telling me, people texting me, Benjamin, and saying, I tell you what, Mika, I hope you're not doing the whole fucking podcast in that voice, because you won't have any listeners left by the end of it.
I think you'll find that's me texting you, asking you not to do that voice for the whole podcast.
Please, gosh, because you'll be able to stop. Benjamin, anyways.
Right.
Tell you what, though. Speaking of people putting on a funny voice for no reason, have you been following the latest news about the Batman fella?
Jesus Christ. No, Michael, tell me more.
I tell you what, Benjamin, I tell you what's going on now.
Oh, please stop.
Do you remember that good old Micheál Keaton? Do you remember him now?
Yeah.
He's a grand lad, a grand strong lad.
He's a big strapping lad. Yeah.
Big strapping lad, good old Micheál Keaton. I tell you what, Benjamin, there's a rumour going around down the old parish. I heard it from Father Mulcahy himself, that Micheál Keaton would be coming back in the owl films to reprise the role of the old Batman fella.
Yeah, he used to pop up in the Flash series as well.
No, not the Flash series, Ben, the Flash film.
Oh, the Flash film.
You know, with your man, the fella who likes going around choking women and pushing them on the ground.
Michael Keaton?
No, your man from out of the bisexual fella.
Oh, bloody...
I've got a bit more cork now.
Yeah, I don't know where you're going with this. I can't remember his name. His name escapes me. He's a very odd guy.
Good old Ezra Miller is the name of the fella.
Ezra Miller's the old name. What do you mean he's been pushing women around? What's that about?
Ezra Miller, he got in trouble in Iceland for choking out a woman, I think.
Oh, Jesus.
During the old lockdown.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, yeah,
Ezra,
no, it wasn't.
You saucy minx.
Wasn't very good, no. I tell you what, though, Ben, I wouldn't say there's much worry of this happening.
Of the movie happening?
Of Michael Keaton appearing in the film Flash. I say there's about as much chance of that as there is me doing this accent for the whole podcast.
Depends on how much money he gets paid, I suppose.
Oh, no, Ben, I've no doubt that they've contacted Micheál Keaton. He's a grand strapping lad. The thing is, Ben, there's no fucking chance of that Flash film ever getting made at all.
Yeah, I think the film is probably very much in doubt here, Michael. I've had a quick scan of the interwebs, and apparently his little woman beating stunt.
Oh yes, it wasn't the best. No,
it wasn't the best. Now,
of
Michael,
course, if it was Ireland in the 50s, it would have been grand.
And Michael, let's be honest, it's not a rumor, buddy. There's a full video out there.
Oh no, that's not a rumour. The rumour is the Michael Keaton thing.
Yeah, the rumour's the Michael Keaton thing. Look,
Ezra Miller loves choking out a woman.
Who knew?
But the whole world, Ben. This is very big news a few months ago. I'm surprised you didn't know about it. You must be on not on the internet very often because you're down and knocking the sheen and you haven't got any Wi-Fi.
Can I just pause from the podcast and say I can't do this if you can't?
But Benjamin, I've made a commitment now. I don't even know how I'd sideways out of this, to be honest. I think you'll have to talk for a little bit, and then hopefully by the time you're finished talking, I'll have I'll have de-escalated from this character that I've created.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of voices that nobody wants that are mildly racist, there's been a bit of a backlash, Michael, in the animation community this week. Several lead actresses have stepped down from their voiceover roles in various animated comedies, whilst other lead actresses have voiced their regret over voicing certain characters. This comes in the wake, Michael, obviously, of the Black Lives Matters movement and the George Floyd killings and the really society-wide retrospection on what's okay and what's not okay when it comes to racial representation.
The old Americans have gone mad.
Well, I don't know if it's mad to do this, Michael, because in fairness, pretty dodgy casting in the first place. So there are several popular animated TV shows at the minute, Michael, especially in the light of COVID. Animated TV shows seem to be thriving in the COVID environment, and many actresses this week have announced that they'll be stepping down from their roles where they are white actresses voicing biracial characters or ethnically different characters. The biggest of those, with the most popular role, would probably be Jenny Slate, who's stepping down from her role as Missy on Big Mouth.
Well, disagree there, because the guy who plays Cleveland in the Family Guy series is also stepping down. He's probably a even bigger name. But yeah, no, it's very interesting, isn't it? It's a very, very fine line what's going on. As long my personal feeling about it, Ben, and here's my personal feeling.
Go on.
Is those characters weren't like Missy. I don't watch Big Mouth a lot, but I didn't think that she was played as biracial, if you know what I mean. Yeah. It's not. It's just her skin color is one thing about the character. Jenny Slate's not doing, for want of a better term, black voice.
No, I didn't think so.
As far as I could tell, she was doing pretty much her regular voice. So, you know, there's a whole aspect to it where you're looking at it and going, so what you're saying is there is a racial difference in people's voices? Is that what they're saying? That you
I think it's a representation issue. I think the argument is biracial roles for biracial women.
Yeah.
From what I can tell.
I mean, Ben, one of your favorite characters of all time is a Japanese samurai played by a black guy.
Oh yeah, that's true. He is one of my favorite characters of all time.
Yeah, Samurai Jack is famously played by Phil Lamar,
who is not Japanese nor a samurai.
No, he's not even a samurai.
Samurai representation matters, huh?
Yeah, if he was a black samurai, it'd be fine. But he's not even a samurai. But you know, yeah, there are issues like that. I mean, Darth Vader is famously.
There was some call that I did read a little bit about that as well, because that name has been pulled into the midst of this, and the argument, I think several prominent critics said that he was given a black voice actor to further scare white audiences.
Yeah,
which is a big stretch.
I think it's a bit of a stretch. I certainly didn't know that Darth Vader's voice actor was black when I was growing up.
Yeah, I had
not only did I not know, Ben, I also didn't care, because as far as I was concerned, he was a giant evil half robot man.
Yeah, he's a big.
I never even knew there was a voice actor, and that's kind of. I mean, there's a whole other thing then if you're talking about comic or cartoons for kids or cartoons for adults. Like, it's a very interesting topic, and like what's being presented is that this is the actors making the choice.
But it definitely isn't. Yeah.
Well, but that's the question. As long as that is, it's a quite noble and helpful thing to do. But if it isn't, if there is something more to it, where there, and I mean there almost certainly is, because every choice is made based on some sort of societal pressure. It's a very interesting thing. It's not like the Apu thing from a couple of years ago, where it was a white actor playing a very obvious Indian stereotype. But even then, Apu was mostly a sympathetic character, and I don't know. I think it's interesting.
There's a real danger of it being insincere, because Alison Brie has stepped forward and she voices Diane Wynn on BoJack Horseman.
Right,
who
yeah.
is a Vietnamese American character.
Yeah.
And she released a large statement saying that she regrets ever taking that role. But that's 7 seasons in and all paychecks in the bank.
Yeah.
And she certainly didn't regret it for 7 seasons.
But I mean...
And she certainly says she regrets ever playing it now.
But, I mean, was Diane Wynn... She was up on screen representing Vietnamese Americans.
Yeah, I would
Like,
also argue that any
it's a
self-respecting Vietnamese American wouldn't speak very differently.
Yeah, that's the
to
other
that.
thing, isn't it?
That's the other thing. I don't know whether they're expecting someone to have a very strong Vietnamese accent while they speak English in that role. Like, I don't know.
If that was Alison Brie doing that, yeah, maybe not great.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
Having said that, Ben, yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's
I do have a little gem for the listeners here.
Go on.
That might help you to understand what we mean when we say there's a right way to portray a different ethnicity as a voice role, and there's a wrong way to do it. If you go way, way back, Michael, before Audible existed, and I've spoken about this before, Audible, the popular audiobook platform from Amazon.
Right, yeah.
Book companies used to publish their own audiobooks in large collections of CDs, and we had one of those, Michael, in my house, and it was the Artemis Fowl.
The Artemis Fowl
audiobook series. But Michael, it was narrated by a famous stage actor here in Ireland called Adrian Dunbar. Okay. And Adrian Dunbar would give different characters different ethnicities and national backgrounds based on what he assumed they would be. And what you can hear in the opening of the Artemis Fowl audiobook, Michael, as you know, he goes to Vietnam where he visits a Vietnamese fairy.
Oh, yeah.
And, Michael, you will get to hear a roughly 43-year-old Irishman do his best impression of a Vietnamese fairy woman. And that's as bad as it sounds. So
is there any way we could have some of that, then? I'd like to hear some of that.
I still have it, but I downloaded the new audiobook. Adrian Dunbar is a dark memory at this point. It's been completely re-recorded. Because I'd say somebody went back and went, oh no.
Oh no, you can't do that.
No.
Oh, you can't do that.
No. Foley is played as a stereotypical black man from America.
Right.
Which is interesting for a 43-year-old white Irishman to try and do.
Yeah. Having said that, Ben, I mean, on this very podcast, we do cod French accents and Italian accents and German accents and Spanish accents, and
that's true.
Yeah, it's
we can't really hide from that, can we?
Look, we're going through a bit of a cultural revolution at the moment, and we're going to have to see what it looks like on the other side.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know about you, Michael, but I lose about 50% of my funny if I can't, racially profile people with my funny voices.
And you're only 50% funny anyway, so that would bring you down
50% funny anyway.
So
this podcast is about to get a whole lot duller.
Yeah. Well, I'll make up for it with this voice that I've done.
Oh, God.
Although it's probably... Yes, listen, it's time to do the...
What's next on the list?
I don't know. What is next on the list?
We don't have a lot to talk about this week, Michael.
Oh, there was a new trailer, Benjamin. I'm going to describe this trailer for you, and you tell me about how excited you are about the twists and turns, Ben.
Okay.
Imagine, Ben, that you had an A-list celebrity.
Oh, yeah.
And that A-list celebrity was in a film. And that film, in the film, this A-list celebrity played an assassin.
Okay.
A deadly assassin at the top of their game.
Ooh-wee.
And the other people in the assassin organization were also A-list Hollywood celebrities.
Ooh-wee.
But then, Ben, the assassin starts asking too many questions, or he develops a conscience. And the assassin organization that the assassin is a member of decides to get rid of that assassin.
Yeah, because it wouldn't be a great assassin if they had a conscience, would it, Michael?
No, exactly.
No.
So, Benjamin, how many times have you seen that?
Well, let's see. There's 2010 Salt. There's
Salt, yeah.
Atomic Blonde.
There was that Will Smith one from last year.
Gemini Man,
yeah.
There's Wanted.
There's too many Will Smiths. Wanted,
ill-fated adaptation from Mark Miller.
Red,
where
Red
old
2.
assassins develop a conscience.
That one even has John Malkovich.
Yeah, Red 2, where they get an even bigger conscience.
Yeah, I mean, Jason Bourne. Arguably.
Leon in the 1990s, where
basically,
where he adopted
any film about assassins, Ben. It's the assassin's film. It's the assassin's plot. Anyway, there's a new one, and this time it's Jessica Chastain who's the assassin.
I could not care less, Michael. honestly don't think that matters in the slightest. I still can't tell the difference between Jessica Chastain and that other lady who looks very like her.
Do you mean
Dallas, Bryce Dallas Howard? Yes, it's Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell is in it, Ben. He's doing an Irish accent.
Oh, yeah.
Probably the last time he'll be allowed to do that.
Yeah, because, can't be doing that.
Yeah, can't be doing that. People will be saying, you can't be doing that, Colin. I'd be going, this is my real voice, you fuckers.
Michael,
I've been doing that American accent for years. That's the one you should be worrying about.
Michael, does this mean that we have to stop doing voices on the podcast? Because if so, this
No,
episode is going to be very dull.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think we're all right as long as it's your own people you're doing the voice of.
Well, then it's fine, isn't it?
Yeah. So Ben, that Ava is the name of that film, and it looks generic.
What is it with bloody assassin films just using the one name of the woman? No, the one name of the woman. Ava, Hannah, Salt. Yeah. Like all of them just take the name of the woman. Like, there it is. Like it started with Nikita, the French film that launched that whole thing. But then you had Nikita, Leon, Hannah, Ava.
Lucy.
It just keeps Lucy.
Don't forget Lucy.
That was a thing.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
Red Sparrow.
It's just lazy.
Anyway, I don't care. But look, we'll probably see it because there's a bit of a drought of films. For one thing, Tenet has been pushed back, Ben.
Not Tenet.
Or is it Tenet?
Tenet.
Is it Tenet? Okay,
yes, it's named after Christopher Nolan's first apartment.
Oh, he was a tenant.
Yeah, no, he was in 10A. Next to 10B. It was a pretty nice apartment in a London block of flats.
10A. Oh, that's the worst joke ever. That's more obnoxious than the 10 minutes of Irish accent I did at the beginning.
No, it is.
That was very bad. Anyway,
right.
Yeah, what's going on? I think that's it, isn't it? Batman, Ava, yeah.
We got nothing, Michael. Look, last week, Michael, you and I took it upon ourselves.
What did we do?
We had one of our classic Irishmen Spas episodes.
Oh, yeah.
And we got into the territory of Paddy Whacked, Michael. And Paddy Whackery. And basically, Michael, that's what we're looking at today. We set upon a course of action that I don't entirely regret, much to my chagrin. We decided we watch Darby O'Gill for the podcast, and we decided we watch bloody Leprechaun for the podcast.
That's right, that's true.
Because of the two films that give a more narrow depiction of the Irish people, I could not find better examples.
Oh, begosh and begorra, top of the morning. What about that one about Janine Garofalo trying to find a husband?
I don't
What's
remember
that one called? I think it's called Janine Garofalo Tries to Find a Husband.
Is that not a reality TV series on Fox?
No, I can't remember what it's called.
I don't know what that is. I'd say it's terrible.
She goes to a matchmaking fair in Ireland. It's actually all right. It's pretty funny.
One of my favourites, Michael, is the much maligned at this point, I think. What's the one where bloody Lois Lane comes to Ireland and she walks from Cork to Dublin in an afternoon?
Leap Year,
that's the one, Michael.
Leap Year? Yeah.
She walks from Cork to Dublin in an afternoon. She starts in Cork and strolls her way on up to Dublin in an afternoon.
Although that's a classic Irish film with next to no Irish people in it.
Zero.
They had Ozzy Bloody Mandius playing the Irish love interest. It's like, are there no Irish people? Can you not get an Irishman? Oh, look, we're talking about representation. Can you not get a bloody Irishman to bloody to play that character?
Well, I tell you what shocked me, Michael, most of all.
They should have got Phil Lamar.
It's Phil Lamar as a samurai, playing an Irishman. I tell you what shocked me the most, Michael, when I took a look at Darby O'Gill, was there are actually quite a lot of Irish actors in that.
Yes, there are.
There's a lot of genuine representation of Irish people in that film by Irish people, even though they do a terrible job of their own accent.
Some of them. We'll get to that in a minute though, Ben, because first of all, why don't you tell us, for this very special episode of Irishman Suspense, episode 6, probably should have said that in Irish, what even is leprechauns?
Well, leprechauns are one branch of the fairy folklore system here in Ireland. it depends on which text you read. There's either one leprechaun in all of Irish folklore, or there are leprechauns. Now, the argument that you'll find from a lot of folklorists is that there's one leprechaun.
So it's someone's name.
He's the leprechaun.
Right.
And he's a cobbler. And that's the famous role that he plays. But is he a tricksy fella?
He's made out of peaches.
He's made out of peaches. He's a big old cobbler fairy. And if you want 3 wishes, you cut yourself off a slice and try to choke it down. And that's the way it works, you know. That's the way it works. And basically, as you go through with that, there are certain rules that happen if you catch yourself a leprechaun. And usually you get 3 wishes, or you get yourself a pot of gold. But, Michael.
Yes?
You best not be caught sleeping, son, because if you do, then it's game over. He'll trick you. And he'll take whatever he wants away from you.
He's a real Faustian type.
Yeah, it's real bad. So that's the leprechaun. But I think, Michael, it's probably the perfect example of what we could call paddywhackery. And when I say paddywhackery, Michael, I mean the misrepresentation of Irish people on screen. It's a very fitting episode for us to do that, a fitting bit of news. But I would say that largely through the history of cinema and television, etc., we've probably been much maligned when it comes to representation. We get an odd whack of the shillelagh, so to speak.
As they say.
Our country is portrayed as some kind of backwards hovel in which people live a quaint existence and still believe in superstitions and shenanigans.
Well, I mean, still believing in superstitions and shenanigans actually makes a lot of sense in a film where superstitions and shenanigans turned out to be true.
Yeah, I mean...
Like, Ben, in the world of the X-Files, Scully's a bloody idiot.
Yeah. The doubting Jane of the whole affair.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? Like, I mean, in the real world, yes, she's the sane and reasonable one. But in that universe they live in, she's a big dumbass.
Yeah, no, it's not great, Michael. It's not great. She's a bit of a plank. She has been shown time and time again to have physical evidence that the world is not what it seems, and she's still like, I don't know. I don't know.
Classic Scully.
It's anyway, like Ben, people who see statistics come out every week, Michael, that COVID-19 is a very real and dangerous thing, and they're like, look, let's go to the beach.
It'd be grand.
Let's go
Benjamin,
to the beach.
riddle me this before we go any further.
Go on.
The depiction of the leprechaun, is that really a very Irish thing at all now?
Well, it depends. Again, it depends on what you read.
Right.
Traditionally, a lot of representations have shown them having little red breeches and a green jacket. And they will wear a hat. However, Michael, as I previously stated, the main occupation that occupies a leprechaun's time is cobbling. And you can often see them in a leather apron. So it really depends on who you ask. The problem that we have, Michael, more than anything else, is that a lot of Irish mythology has been co-opted by American authors, and we'll get to that a little bit later. And a lot of it has been designed with the intention of selling an ideal of Ireland to Irish Americans. Yeah. And we'll get to that a little bit later as well. And then the other problem that we have when it comes to our mythology and folklore in general, Michael, is we weren't the most learned of folk, mainly due to a lack of educational resources brought upon by a certain occupation.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the lads that got to write all this down, they were bloody monks or priests.
Oh, they're not the best.
If you let them have a go at your story, Michael, there's going to be an awful lot of stuff about Christ in there. There's going to be an awful lot of stuff about fairies being in league with the devil.
I tell you what, Ben.
Yeah.
I've been to the Leprechaun Museum in Dublin, and like every honest-to-God Irish person, when they announced the Leprechaun Museum in Dublin, I went, oh, for feck's sake.
Yeah, because it's
Get
pretty...
the feck out of here with your little leprechaun-y men. But I've been there, Ben.
Yes.
And I know a couple of people who work there, and maybe someday we'll get them on the podcast.
Oh, we should.
It's not really a leprechaun museum, is it, Ben?
No, not particularly, Michael.
It's not really at all. There's one little room at the start where it says, listen, Americans, leprechauns, you gang made them up.
They're not an actual thing.
Yeah. You took a thing which is kind of tangentially maybe a side little character in one story in Irish mythology.
Emphasis on possibly.
Yeah, and you turned them into this thing which, let's be honest, we're not going to be talking about them again. They're not really that Irish at all, are they?
Yeah, it's not great. It's not very helpful.
And then the rest of the Leprechaun Museum, Ben, is about actual Irish mythology and legends, not the old whacked paddies at the beginning.
which is kind of a useful thing as a re-educational thing. It gets the punters in and then forces them to confront their bloody chicanery and poor representation.
Exactly, it's interesting, isn't it? And then Phil Lamar comes in and does a flip and chops your head off with a samurai sword.
And then we all learn a lesson about representation in media.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. So, Michael, speaking of Americans who tried to make a quick buck out of our existence, how did you find Darby O'Gill?
How did I find it? It was on Disney Plus.
Ah, excellent. I found it there too.
I just searched on the internet.
What did you think of it?
Benjamin, so both of us, we decided to watch. Obviously, every Irish person has seen it. We see it upon birth. It's part of our
mandatory viewing in the hospital.
Yeah, that's one of the first things they do. They bless you. They get a priest in to bless you, give you your Christian name, and then you watch Darby O'Gill and the Little People to really solidify your national identity. I tell you what, Ben, Darby O'Gill, 1959's Darby O'Gill.
1959.
Directed by Robert Stevenson.
Yes.
But really masterminded by Walt Disney.
Yeah, which is interesting, Michael. The history of this production is pretty vast and
so. Yeah,
suspicious.
There's a lot to get into here. I watched it, Ben. I watched it on Disney Plus, and to my infinite regret and shame, I thought it was great.
Yeah, me too. Me too. That's so strange.
I was going, this bloody Darby O'Gill, this has a lot to answer for. And halfway through, I was going, come on, Darby, get rid of Pony Shoegrew. He's a prick.
I did the same thing. I realised the second he ran out of the cave and got away with it, my little heart went, yes, go on, Derby. And I was sitting there going...
I was so ashamed, Ben.
It's so enjoyable.
My good lady friend was kind of watching me watch a bit of Darby O'Gill, going, what are you doing? And I was going, I'm watching Darby O'Gill. It's fucking great. It's a great film. I couldn't believe it.
Same reaction.
I was so ashamed of myself.
It's oddly original, oddly enjoyable, utterly ridiculous.
Yes. And, I mean, okay, look, listen. It is very much a film from the late 50s. In that, the rules of screenwriting that we understand these days aren't really there. To say it has a first, second, and third act, it doesn't really.
Nah. It's much more meandering pub tale.
It's very meandering. Like, a lot of the conflict of it doesn't actually appear until near the end anyway, and then it's resolved almost instantly.
The term shoehorn might actually fit in there.
I don't know if the term shoehorn is fair, because it's not like they've said, we need a goddamn action sequence. It's meandering from start to finish.
Yeah, it just takes its time.
Yeah, it's that classic, like, primary school bringing in the trolley with the television on it. And you know the kids are only going to see half an hour of it, and it doesn't really matter. Because any given half an hour of it, enough happens that you can then turn it off and go, well, that was semi-satisfying.
Well, that scratched some kind of itch.
Yeah. But yeah, it's surprisingly good.
It's surprisingly enjoyable.
And
from
I tell
start
you what,
to finish.
Yeah, the guy who plays Darby, what's his name? Albert Sharp.
Yeah.
He's a real Irish person.
Yeah.
He looks like a real Irish person down the pub. And the king of the fairies,
Jimmy O'D,
he's a
Brian
real
Connors.
Irish person.
Yeah.
And he's very good. Funnily enough, the two, as it were, romantic leads are the only two non-Irish people in it, which is probably a bit racist. That the two people who had to be a bit attractive and sexy were not Irish.
Not entirely, no.
But I tell you what, then very attractive and sexy they both are.
Bloody Sean Connery pre-007. Oh, yes. More like Michael McRide. Am I right?
Oh, well, yeah. You should have said Michael McBride first so that joke has context.
Okay, sorry. I'll go again from the start.
So Sean Connery plays Michael McBride.
More like Michael McRide, am I right?
Very good, yeah, very good.
Yeah, nailed it.
His eyebrows and his lips do most of the acting.
Yeah, but I think that was true of all Sean Connery roles.
Yeah, I'm a Michael McBride. I'm a Dublin man.
In fairness, it's one of the few times I've heard him ever try to mask his Scottish brogue.
Yeah, I didn't realise what he was doing, to be honest, at the start. And then Janet Munro, who's also English.
Yes.
She plays Katie
O'Gill.
Katie O'Gill. I don't know if they ever call her Katie O'Gill, do they? They
no,
always
he says
call her
it once.
Katie.
Yeah, they say it once.
Yeah.
My favourite character in this, Michael, had to be the widow Shugra,
I bloody hated her.
who's
I
this
was like,
bizarre English woman who clearly was a stage presence at some point in her career.
yeah.
And she's short, and she doesn't make any effort. She just uses
Well,
her
she
regular Irish
I
or
don't
English
know
accent.
what she's doing. Yeah, I don't know what voice she's doing. So it is weird because you're watching it, and if you're an American, you're probably like, "There's, oh my god, guys, there's a really quite an interesting variety of accents in Ireland."
No.
'Cause nobody's doing the same accent.
Yeah, no, it's pretty weird.
Not at all. Not at all.
It's pretty weird.
But-
Even the villain of the piece, Pony Shugru, which
Yeah.
is my favorite name for a villain ever.
Yeah.
He is Irish, but doesn't do a very convincing Irish accent.
No, because he's doing stage Irish. He's an
Yeah, it's
actual Irishman
weird.
who's doing stage Irish. Horseplay, Ben.
Yeah,
That's his name.
yeah, it's pretty weird.
Horseplay.
Horseplay. I see what you did.
Well, I don't think it's what I did. It's what the writers did. But yeah, it's. I tell you one thing, Ben. Here's one thing. Now I'll tell you. If you give me a wish to the old ears for a second and listen to me, and I'll tell you one thing about this film that, beyond, above, and beyond all of the rest of them, will tell you it's a
Go
good and honest film. The special effects are spectacular.
Unbelievable, Michael.
Incredible. Incredible. What they've clearly done in it is made two sets. One
Yeah.
set, which is human-sized, and the other set, which is an exact replica and leprechaun-sized. And other than two scenes where someone has to physically interact with King Brian,
Yeah,
it's flawless.
it's actually shocking for 1959.
Incredible.
Jimmy O'Dea spent months in California. He went over. Jimmy O'Dea is the man who plays, as we said, Brian Connors, the
Yeah.
King of the Fairies. And he spent months in California filming by himself on a set.
Yeah.
Really bizarre. That gave months of his life to this project.
There's loads of cool trivia about this film. Like,
Yeah.
they used different sized lighting rigs to maintain the correct lighting on set, so that, you know, people seem to be lit from the same source. Because if they used the same light, then the little people would have looked, the lighting on them would have been wrong.
Yeah,
So
would
they
have
had
looked
massive
jarring.
lights on the little people. And it took so much electricity that apparently it like blew out the relay station in Burbank when they accidentally turned it on without prepping. It's like, it's the whole thing was filmed in Hollywood as well.
That's the weirdest part, isn't it?
I mean, it's a pretty convincing little Irish town of some indeterminate time period in the past.
Yeah,
I guess
you're
it's set
looking
in the
at-
20s.
It must be. It's supposed to be County Kerry.
Right.
We see that from the postcard that gets sent to
Knocknasheedon.
Michael McRide.
And him
so
a Dublin man.
And him a Dublin man. That's one of my favorite things about Michael, or about it, Michael, are
Yes.
some of the backwards assumptions. So, for example, he doesn't kiss Katie O'Gill.
Mm-hmm.
The father's response is, "And him a Dublin man," as
And
if
him
a
a
Dublin
Dublin
man
man.
should have rode her there on the spot.
An old Dublin man. No honour in the old Dublin men. It's brilliant.
I can't believe he showed her a bit of respect. What a letdown. It's such a bizarre representation, and I love that.
Yeah.
Brian Connor's greatest criticism of Katie O'Gill is, well, you'll find it easy enough to pick up a lad in your 20s, but turn 30 and you'll find you'll not have a husband.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh, wow, what a message. What a message.
She's a very attractive young lady too. She has a tragic
is.
life story, Janet Monroe.
She
Actually,
does.
She died about 38. It's
She
very,
does.
very
She died
sad.
at 38 in mysterious circumstances.
But Ben,
Yeah.
anyway, look, the reason we're talking about this film is its depiction of the Irish mythologies as well. And
Yeah.
for all your talk about solitary leprechauns, they're not very solitary in this, Ben. They're always having a feckin' Cayley.
I tell you, bloody, they are not, Michael. They're having a rare old time all
Yeah.
the time. So this is a fascinating film, Michael, for a number of reasons. First of all, as we said, I quite enjoyed it. The other thing is quite an accurate depiction of certain Irish folklore tales.
Go on.
We get the little people.
Yeah.
They live by a very clear set of rules.
Yeah.
They are known for having a lep about and a ceilidh and a sing-along and da-da-da-da-da. But we also get two representations of much lesser-known Irish folklore figures in a proper sense. We get the Banshee.
Oh, Christ on a bike, that Banshee was feckin' terrifying.
Yeah, and she had her silver comb. She carries the comb around with her in the depiction. And then, the strangest representation, something that I've never seen on film or mentioned in passing, is the Quist Bower, which is the death coach, driven by the Dullahan. And the Dullahan is... the Dullahan is the original Headless Horseman. Many people feel that he probably inspired Irving Washington's depiction of the Headless Horseman as a Celtic kind of run-on. And it was really interesting to see him just pop up at the end of the film. So there's a lot going on. There's a puka. That's what the black horse is. And it's mentioned by Darby himself. She'll be chasing a puka.
She'd be chasing a puka and they'd be going and get her and she fell off the cliff. Then we'd bring her back and now she's grand. And that all happened in 25 minutes and we weren't really worried about that at the beginning. But oh, what is going on? What's this now?
Absolutely bloody grand. And I mean, it's a pretty interesting depiction of all that. There's some very interesting depictions of Irish rural life as well. The reverence for the reverend that pops in, for the priest that pops in, that's all there. The strange want to do right by him, going collecting the bell, and it's really interesting. The pub is the central focus.
The old power of the church. Yeah.
But there's also a reasonably restrained portrayal of Irish people in that nobody's drunk in the film.
No, and I mean, there's when Michael McRide implies that Darby might be an alcoholic, Katie's very upset, and she's like, "He's not a drinking man.
Yeah,
he just goes down for the company."
She's
having said that, though, the scene where he sings and drinks with King Brian is. I mean, you say that there's not a lot of drink, but alcohol is consistently present through the whole film.
That is
the whole film is based around the pub and getting drunk with fairies.
And a big bottle of puncheon he found in the bog.
Yeah, there's alcohol constantly. Pony is always after the whiskey. They give the thing of whiskey to King Brian. It's the only way to get him to talk. There's non-stop alcoholism in it for sure.
Yeah, that's true, actually, now that you mention it. But anyway, coming back to King Brian and that whole concept, this is all based on a book, Michael.
Get out of here.
Well, not necessarily a book, but a serialized short story collection that came out from 1903 to 1905. And those stories were written by, and this gets a bit convoluted, a woman born in Louth.
Okay.
Raised
highest
in
road
England.
Deaths in Ireland.
As high as what?
Road deaths.
Oh, that's kind of sad.
Yeah.
So raised in England, among nobility, and then finished her life in Chicago.
Oh. How international.
She wrote these stories when she was around 30 years old, and they were the Darby O'Gill and the Good People.
Oh,
not the little
people.
Okay, the concept of the little people is born from this film. This notion of calling them the little people, and she wrote a series of stories on this, and they've been collected now. I have read 3 of them in anticipation of this occasion, Michael, and a lot of what Americans believe here, a lot of what Americans have taken, have clearly been taken from the stories by this woman. This woman's name is very telling of her round-the-world upbringing. It was Hermione Templeton Kavanagh.
That's very mixed up.
Very mixed up. Very all around the place. And she created these stories. And the original 3 stories were Darby O'Gill and the Good People, how the fairies came to Ireland, and Darby O'Gill and the Leprechaun.
Oh.
So
that sounds like you've combined them all together, you'd get the film.
You're bloody right, Michael. You're bloody spot on. Bang on the money. So, Michael, let me tell you the first tale.
Okay.
And one of the things that marks this out is completely different, Michael, is that it's a much more sinister tale. So, Darby O'Gill is a perfectly normal farmer, not an outlaw.
Okay.
He has 3 prize pigs.
Okay.
That he's going to sell at a fair. And Darby goes out one day to check on the pigs, and wouldn't you know it, one of them's gone amok. Okay, one of them's gone.
All right,
Completely disappeared. Sorry, run amok. I meant to say run amok. One of them's disappeared, and he goes, Jesus, who stole my bloody goddamn pig?
Where's my prize pig, you bastards?
And he says, do you know what? I'm not going to bother looking for it because I got 2 more perfectly good pigs right there. I'll just sell them instead. So he comes out the next day, and wouldn't you know it, he's another pig down.
Oh.
So he returns a third time and he says, Jesus, the third pig's gone infect. So he says, do you know what? I'm going to have to feed the family somehow. I'll just sell my favourite cow in the whole wide world, Rose.
Oh, Rose.
And he goes out to get Rose, and Jesus Christ, some thieving, murdering son of a gun has gone and stole Rose.
As well.
So he goes down to the village, he barges into the pub and he says, which one of you thieving, cantankering, murthering sons of guns has stolen my cow and 3 pigs? And the pub says, it wasn't us, man. Give over.
Who was it?
And so then, bloody representative of the fairies in the Owl village there steps up, and her name is Sheila Maguire. Very Irish.
How very Irish, yeah.
And Sheila Maguire is a spy for the fairies. She's the fairy doctor in the village. She says, now, you know as well as any that no man here could scoot away 3 pigs and a cow in one single week. And he goes, yeah, it does seem a bit suspicious, all right. She goes, it was bloody fairies. So what you do is, you head on up there to that field where the fairy fort is, you have a lie in it, and you keep your eye out and see if your cow turns up. And if it does, you'll have 1 chance to snatch it back, or the fairies will take you forever. So Darby O'Gill says, right, I'll go up and do it. And he goes and he sits in the field. He lies down in the field and waits for it all to pan out. And Michael, then comes one of the best descriptions of kind of otherworldly occurrences that I've ever read in a book. And the shadows begin to creep into the night and kind of slip together, and the fairies kind of materialize out of the shadows. It's all very spooky, Michael.
Ooh.
And then, Michael,
yes.
Darby O'Gill gets up to give one of them a clatter, and what's in front of him only is prize cow Rose.
Oh,
so
Rose
he jumps behind her
good.
to scalp her on the arse and move her down the path back towards the house. And when he does, Michael, she's only gone and been enchanted, and she takes off at a gallop, and he grabs the end of her, and then he gets kind of dragged through County Tipperary at top speeds, because the original takes place in Tipperary and Clare.
Oh, not Cork and Kerry.
Nope, not at all. And he gets kind of pulled through the thing, and the fairies chase him chasing the cow. So there's this kind of raucous kind of chase scene through Tipperary, which is kind of bizarre. Anyway, the heel of the reel of the jig is he lets go of the cow, gets dumped down. The fairies take him, and before they take him, they say, you can come willingly or we can drag you. Oh. And much to their dismay, he says, sure, I'll come along. I've never seen a fairy. Because he's a very practical man, Darby O'Gill. He realises that he's on the precipice of a huge discovery for humankind. And he says, look, I've never spent time with fairies. I'll go with you willingly. And that's a real shame, Michael, because as he's passing through the mountain, which is Sleeving him on in this incarnation, he finds that there's loads of humans down there. But they're under the sway of what he calls the black charm.
Oh.
And that's alluded to a couple of times in the movie. It's called the Come Hither.
Yeah.
You'll hear them mention it a few times. And the Come Hither is basically, if you resist a fairy, they can charm you.
Oh.
And then you're trapped with the fairies forever until Judgment Day. Yeah. And Michael, we're going to get into that in a second. But basically, he finds that there are loads of people. Basically, anyone that ever wandered out of a village, anyone that disappeared from a village is there. Okay, they're all there in Sleeving. And Sleeving isn't one fairy fort, it's the fairy fort. This is where all the fairies gather all linked, in Sleeving. Yeah. And so he meets his wife's sister, who he thought had died, but she was taken away by the fairies under the black charm. And she feels awful for him. And because he's not under the black charm...
Because he went willingly,
basically he's going to die of old age here. Whereas everyone else can party and drink to their heart's content until Judgment Day. And basically, the fairies are going to try and trick him 3 times, because 3 is the magic number in Irish folklore. And the 3 times they try to trick him, he basically has to go along with it, because if he's seen to resist the fairies at any point, they can put the black charm on him, and that's it. But anyway,
little sneaky feckers.
Sheila takes a pity on him and she comes up with a way of doing it, and she alerts him to every time they try to charm him. So the first time, they leave the side of the mountain wide open. Right. And they don't say nothing to him. So they say, you go about your business there, Darby, don't worry about it at all. And basically, if he tries to escape through the mountain, as you would when you see it left wide open like that, they'll be able to drag him back and put him under the charm. The second time they do it, King Brian Connors himself says, sure, look, I'll let you go. You're a lovely fella. Go on, I'll let you be.
All right, that seems fair enough.
That seems fair enough, but he wasn't serious, Michael.
That was a trick.
He's going to trick him, and then he was going to put him under the charm. So anyway, Darby managed to avoid this all the times. And then finally, Michael, he discovers that the fairies have a secret word to open the side of the tunnel. Now, in the movie, it's Uskel, which is open in Gaelic, which is fairly handy. But it's pretty Irish, apparently in this, Michael, it's such a foul secret word that Darby O'Gill is forced to bless himself 3 times when he hears it. And then he's forced to go to confession after he says it to open the door. So there's one of the key differences between this film and the book that inspired it, or the short stories that inspired it, is religion is a huge part of this world. Fairies are very much in league with the devil, and any kind of holy phrase, any kind of thing like that, is like burning them. So they're almost vampiric in their iteration here. And so we see a lot of that. Anyway, he gets the magic word, slips on out the side of the mountain, and he knows the fairies are coming for him. So he goes back down the pub with the lads. He goes, look, lads, I've been gone for 6 long months. And wouldn't you know it, I was being held by the fairies. And the good Irish people of Tipperary say, that'll be it. 6 months hidden away in a mountain. Yeah, that'll be it. Nobody bats an eyelid. They all believe him. And so they come about with a plan. And it turns out that one thing the fairies hates is holly branches, because holly branch is a Christmas tree. Right. And, they don't like Christ. Yeah, they don't like Christ. So what they do is they set up 2 rings of holly bough around one around his house, and then another one with a slight gap. Right. And the aim of that is that you have your 2 circles, and there's a slight gap in the other one. But little do the fairies know, there's a piece of string tied to another piece of holly, and once the fairies come into the first circle, they can't touch the house, but they're trapped in this first circle. So you can pull the bit of string, and it'll close the gap and make a full circle.
Get them all tied up.
So this is the whole thing that goes down, right? And so they go through with this plan because the fairies come to kind of cause havoc for poor Darby O'Gill, and they come into the first circle and they can't touch the house. And as soon as the last kind of denizen of the fairies comes in, he closes the gap. They're all trapped in that circle. Now, Michael, the rules set out in this film, so they have no power in the daylight. Yeah. Cock's crow causes all kinds of damage. They all come from this book. And they were actually roughly researched by this woman. She did do quite a bit of effort to find out what the actual rules are. So, once the sun comes up, fairies are powerless. Right. And they can be seen by any mortal eye. Oh. And so that's the whole thing. So basically, the sun comes up, the whole court is revealed. 1 or 2 of them slipped away. They managed to, before he closed the pack, they didn't go in. And they run and they get Brian Connors. And Brian Connors comes down and says, what the fuck is this? What are you at, Darby O'Gill, you absolute chancer? And he says, look, I let them all go. Don't you worry your fairy little head about it. But you have to do a couple of things for me. Oh. And so Brian O'Connor goes, fine, go on. What you want? And he says, well, number 1, you're going to let my lovely sister-in-law go. So they do that. They let her go, and she gets to rejoin the family. Hooray. It's a great time for everyone. Number 2, I'll not be having any of this. You'll never be bothering me again. You're not allowed to cause any harm to anyone in this village ever again. And Brian is there going, but what are we going to do for fun then?
Yeah, you're ruining it.
You're ruining it. But he says, well, look, I could just leave them in the holly if you want, Yeah. And he goes, yeah, cheeky blighter, go on.
You rapscallion.
I'll do it. And then he starts really pushing his luck. He's like, and you're going to give me a mountain of gold. And he's like, here. Here. Now will you get to... And you're going to give me my 3 pigs and my prize cow back. And he's like, fuck it.
This is getting a bit above and beyond now. Beyond the pale.
And so anyway, he does it. And he gives all these things back. And he says, if I ever see you again, Darby O'Gill, I'll give you a scalping. And Darby O'Gill says, not allowed to touch me. We made a deal. And he goes, as they're leaving anyway, the priest comes down.
Go on.
And the priest comes down and he says, Darby, sure you did it. Good man yourself. And this is where it gets really bizarre. The priest starts to scold him for not asking for more, right? So
Classic priest.
he says, "Look, you freed your sister-in-law. You should have freed everyone from the fairies' control." Yeah,
He does have a point there now.
Yeah, you selfish man, right? And then he says, "What do you mean you only got gold for yourself? You should have got gold for the whole village." To which Darby replies,
parish.
"Sure, if everyone was rich, then I wouldn't feel any better." So this is a really interesting thing.
Very good.
And then he says, "And you should have gotten harm for no one in Ireland, not only the people of thing." And he goes, and then Darby O'Gill answers with, "Well, look, I never had a more hospitable time than I did when I was with the fairies. They were the best hosts a man could have asked for. And I'll have no major harm done to them. I won't ask for more than I'm due."
Very good.
Apparently Brian Connors hears this as he's leaving. He goes, "Oh, that Darby, he's all right."
a
And they
good egg.
become firm friends from that day on. So
egg.
if you drop by Darby O'Gill's house between 12 in the evening and 3 in the morning, you can find him sitting at the hearth when the Chidlers are asleep and his good wife Bridget has gone gently into that good night. And
That means died, Ben.
They're having a... Well, not that then, sorry, that's my mistake. They're having a ship of the poaching at the hearth and waxing lyrical
grand.
about all things.
One of the finest things about the film, Ben,
Yeah.
is Walt Disney, Ben.
Yeah.
He wanted to present this as if he'd gone to Ireland and
know.
come back with this.
I know.
And so, following on from that logic, none of the leprechauns are credited in the film.
Yeah, which is a real fucking dick move for Jimmy O'D.
Is it? But look, anyway, it led to something spectacular, something which was sent to us by our good friend and good friend of the podcast, Dr.
Yeah.
Stephen Jedward Caswell. He sent us this, Ben. They made a half-hour promotional thing about Walt Disney coming to Ireland and capturing the King of the Fairies.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
And I tell you what, Ben, that's much worse than the film.
Yeah, it's pretty poor. Walt Disney also lied and said
Yes,
he
go
was
on.
half Irish for a lot of the promotional material surrounding that. There was an insider memo sent around Disney when this was being kind of thought up and promoted. And basically,
It's called it's called, in case anyone wants to look it up, it's called I Captured the King of the Fairies. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I think that's what it's called. It's on Daily Motion. We might put a link to it somewhere in our Instagram or on the website, so you can check it out at seanmcbug.com.
Oh, god damn it, Ben.
Pretty good.
By we, you mean me. Now I have to do that.
You have to do that.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah, got him. So the memo is a little bit cynical. It says basically we've got 20 million people who will lap this up, and by that he means Irish Americans. And he said, I want to get the people with shamrocks in their eyes. So that's what he meant by this, and it's a pretty cynical cash grab, and it's based off the back of a lot of films that had come out after World War II that had tried to do the same. One of them was far more successful than the other, and that's the famous John Ford film, The Quiet Man.
Yeah, that's different.
And the Quiet Man made a mint, and it appealed to something that critics now call the Irish return narrative. And basically, it was this kind of fantasy that a lot of Irish Americans had, second-generation immigrants and things like that. They had this fantasy of kind of returning to the homeland and soothing the ills of modern city life, because Ireland was just a hovel in the ground and it was a simple way of life. And, you know, it would be hard to argue that myth has died away, because we see in other stories from people like Colin Tobin in the modern era, Brooklyn starring Saoirse Ronan and things like that. It's the exact same thing. It's this return to the homeland, return to the balm of your youth kind of thing. It's a bizarre thing, and he was trying to cash in mainly on that.
Not very successfully, because it wasn't a big financial hit when it came out.
Nope.
It has
do
gone
very
on
well
to obviously be pretty well regarded and to make plenty of money, but it wasn't a huge success at the time. I tell you what though, Ben.
Go on.
As far as depictions of leprechauns in culture go, it's one of the friendlier ones, because I watched a much worse one.
Oh no, what did you watch?
Bloody 1993 film, Ben, Leprechaun.
Ugh.
I haven't even written down the director's name. I've forgotten who it was. The most notable thing about it is that Jennifer Aniston is in it.
Yeah, Jennifer Aniston fighting leprechauns.
Jennifer Aniston in her first film, and Warwick Davis, who, coming from our neighbours in the UK, you thought would have known better. But
Come on, Michael. When? let's be honest now.
Known better. One of the best things about it, Ben, is despite being about an evil leper. So I'll tell you very quickly the story. So Daniel O'Grady is an Irishman who's living in America, and he goes back to Ireland, and when he's in Ireland, he catches a leprechaun and he tricks him into getting his gold. And that all happens off screen.
Oh, good.
So he comes back to America and he brings the leprechaun with him.
Uh-oh.
And the leprechaun kills his wife, and he has a stroke. So he manages to trap the leprechaun, and then years later, and then it's just about Americans. So it's very low on the paddywhackery.
Oh, well, that's not too bad, I suppose.
Yeah, it's then about like hick Americans in North
Rural,
Dakota or something,
wherever.
So what's her name? Jennifer Aniston is a city girl from Los Angeles, and she's spending the summer in this hick town in New Mexico or North Dakota or wherever the hell it is, and they accidentally unleash the leprechaun.
Ooh.
And he comes out and does murders, but he's not really leprechaun-y. He doesn't.
No, he's got a funny little voice
or anything. He's just a little prick. He's just a murderous little prick. The only kind of leprechaun-y thing about him, Ben, is that he. Funnily enough, you said about vampires earlier. He has the same reaction to a 4-leaf clover that a vampire has to a holy cross. So a 4-leaf clover has power over him. Again, another thing which really doesn't. It's not a thing in Irish legends.
It's like
and
Superman
mythology.
and Kryptonite. Why would his home planet hurt him so much? What do you mean?
Yeah. So, it's not a great film, Ben. To be honest. It's,
I wouldn't say it is, Michael.
I mean, it's a cult classic, and it's a classic kind of monster creature feature, cheap creature feature from the 90s. Only 1993, though. I thought it was older. 1993, relatively recent in the world of movies.
Look, the 90s were a weird time for horror movies, Michael.
I know, but funnily, like, only 3 years before, say, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
It has a real whack of Buffy the Vampire Slayer off it a little bit, though, doesn't it? It's
no, well, I mean, it doesn't have... It's not great. It's not a great film. I also watched Leprechaun in Space, which is an absolutely weird one. I think we talked about it before, did we?
Yeah, that was on Irishman's Spouse 3, I think.
Well, there's your dad.
There's my dad in the background. There he is. No, it's okay. We're not filming. It's just... There you go.
On that note, Ben, why don't we wrap it up?
Michael, I would like to request that I get to tell the second story next week. All
right.
Which is how the fairies came to Ireland, Michael. Because that one is batshit crazy. And it's fucking great. It's got the Archangel Gabriel and the Archangel Michael in it, Michael. And it's
do you want to do it now?
Weird.
We can do it now. Let's do it now. We'll pad out the last 10 minutes of this. We've got about 8 minutes left.
Bloody bizarre.
Go on, do it.
So basically, Michael,
you've got 8 minutes, Ben. I'm going to put his timer on screen.
Okay, the second time we meet Brian Connors, right? The second time we meet Brian Connors, he meets the priest that we met in the first story. And the priest rides a horse called Terror. And Terror loses a shoe, as you do. And he's stuck in the middle of a bull reading. He goes, Jesus, Lord, preserve me. How am I supposed to get back to the village now on a horse with only 3 shoes? And Brian Connors pops along. He says, how are you, father? And the father, who doesn't bat an eyelid, goes, how are you, Brian? And it's just this bizarre moment. So anyway, turns out that our priest has been having a bit of a bloody a philosophical pondering, Michael. He's been racking his brain and going, sure, how did those little fellas get over here to Ireland? Because he's heard all kinds of rumours, Michael. Apparently the fairies are fallen angels. Apparently the fairies fought against God himself and got cast down. And he says to Brian, while Brian has his farrier, which is a man who puts shoes on horses.
I know.
While he has his for the listeners. And he says, right, they'll do that. We'll smoke a pipe and wax lyrical about where we came from. So they sit there and they go, well, I'll tell you, father. Once upon a time, we were all in heaven together. And father goes, oh, okay, explain that one a little bit to me. Well, you had Old Nick, and that's what they call the devil in this. He's called Old Nick.
Right.
And he said, I forgot to mention the best part about these stories. They are written in what Hermione Templeton Kavanagh assumes to be the Tipperary accent.
Oh, brilliant.
So the spelling is just all over.
Impenetrable. Brilliant. Excellent.
Easy
like Gambit.
Easy is spelled AISY.
Oh, Jesus.
Easy. Nice and easy. And it's just bizarre. Right? So, anyway, he starts to tell them about, well, yeah, back in the day, father, you had your white angels and your black angels.
Oh God, that doesn't sound great.
I know, that's not great, is it? And he said, well, old Nick was there fighting for the rights. So apparently Miss Kavanagh takes the kind of Paradise Lost Milton approach, where the devil is just out for equal rights.
Side. Yeah.
And he goes, well, look, I'm a king of my people, and I wasn't dragging them into no fight that they weren't meant to be a part of, and da-da-da-da-da. But anyway, it turns out the poor Brian Connors had a best friend, and that best friend's name was Thaddeus Flynn. And one day, they were sitting on their perch in heaven, having a look down at all the shenanigans happening down below, and who should come along but your old Nick himself. And old Nick himself, well, he gave an old polemic, and he said, look, we need equal rights. It's not fair that some people should get this and other people should get this, and we should all be equal, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So anyway, Thaddeus Flynn goes, Jesus, you're right. It's not fair that I'm a little short arse with no wings. I should be a fairy.
Yeah,
and then I should be I should turn into an angel and have the same rights as everybody else. So he goes off and he takes part in this battle. And then what follows is we get Brian Connor's Irish summary of the battle between good and evil in heaven.
Excellent.
And basically his summary is, sure, both sides tried to bait each other black and blue.
I thought it was black and white, Ben.
Well, no, black and blue this time. So anyway, they tried to bait each other blue. So Brian takes his lot, the fairies, and they hide under a rampart somewhere. And they kind of wait for all this to blow over. And he gets to watch his buddy Tig. And Thaddeus Flynn doesn't take part in the fight because angels are huge, kind of unknowable creatures, and they can hurl mountains at each other and stuff like that. But apparently there's one fairy in the middle of this huge Lord of the Rings-esque battle going, Jesus, you're an awful prick. Sure, fuck you and the horse you're riding on. It's just one little guy. And my friend Thaddeus Flynn took off his coat and he flung it on the ground and it's just... So you have this bizarre image of a single leprechaun just kind of stamping his feet going, Jesus God, you're an awful bollocks. And
you're all bastards.
It's the best thing I've ever read, Michael. It's so enjoyable to read. And then it gets a bit racist. So basically what happens is the good guys win. The Archangel Gabriel and the Archangel Michael decide what to do with the fairies who didn't take either side. And there's nothing worse than a coward.
Right.
So he said, look, you're an amicable bunch of lads. We'll send you down to Earth. Where would you like to go? And he says, well, I'd like to go to a place where the people are jovial, the men are brave, and the women are fair. And Gabriel goes, right, yeah, cool, tick. And I kid you not, when it says in the book, yeah, I've written that down. That's what Gabriel says to him in response to that. Well, look, I'd like it to be a lovely, lush land, filled with wonderful things that'll entertain you all day long. And he goes, yeah, right, grand, have that down. I'd love the men to drink themselves stupid every night and the women to sing more beautiful than... And he goes, yeah, cool, got all that. And I don't want them to be Catholic. And then he goes, how do you expect me to do that? And he goes, well, I don't want them to be Catholic. And the other thing I want is I don't want them to have any kind of power, because power makes a man boring. So make them impoverished and poor.
Oh, Jesus.
And Gabriel goes, okay, how do you expect me to make that happen? And then Brian Connors says, well, make them Jews.
Oh, Christ.
And Gabriel says in response to that, well, I can't make them poor and a Jew, because those two don't go.
Jesus.
Isn't that the worst thing?
Ben, I don't like where this is going.
So anyway, he goes, sure, look, I'll figure it out myself. So they fling the whole lot of fairies down, and the fairies wander the earth for a while, and they go to Spain and France and Switzerland and Germany and all the other places in Europe. And that's how fairies came to be all around the world, because they let little tribes of them all over the place. And eventually they found the beautiful Ireland, and they settled there for the rest of the days. They hollowed out Slieve na Mon and made it their home. And it's just the weirdest story, Michael, you'll ever read. It'll take you 5 minutes to read it. I strongly recommend that you do. It's incredibly entertaining, except for that one horrifically racist bit in the middle.
A little bit racist, that middle bit.
It's so racist, Michael. But such an entertaining romp. This was an extra long episode of Michael and Benjamin's podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
It's only 3 minutes above an hour. We're all right.
That's fair. That's fair. Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever watched this bloody film? What did you think of it? Have you ever read these bloody stories?
It's brilliant.
What did you think of them? We'd like to give a special thank you to Stephen J. Cadwell, who sent us on the bizarre Walt Disney capturing the King of the Fairies promo bit. So it's just a really bizarre story. I quite enjoyed watching Darby O'Gill, though, much to my shame.
Yeah, very shameful.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to engage with more Irish pop culture things, you can get in touch with us in a number of ways. We're on the internet at seomrabeag.com, seomrabeag.com.
It means trying to ruin Irish, kind
It
of.
does indeed, kind of. You can also find us on Le Gram at seomrabeag, seomrabeag.com. No, not .com. Remove that .com.
You've invented some new letters there, Ben, but I think people...
Look, they get the idea. And you can give us some topics that you'd like to hear discussed, ladies and gentlemen. You can give us some topics you'd like to hear discussed. That's it from us this week, Michael, isn't it?
Yeah, next week, who knows what we're talking about?
Oh, God only knows. Hopefully not bloody racist Jewish depictions. It's pretty weird.
Well, I mean, we could.
We could.
Who's
to
want
say?
to touch that with a barge pole?
It's not for us, Michael. Not for us. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, slán a bhaile, and may the road rise to meet you.
And may all the day be soft and grand and fucking that's all.
Okay.